Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Goods coming to you from the great city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now, would you believe it if I told you that Grand Rapids actually has a castle? Can you imagine great stone walls and turrets looming on the Michigan horizon? Can you even fathom that this structure is so big it's been deemed the second largest castle structure in the world? Well, it's true. The Grand Castle of Grand Rapids is actually in Grandville, an appropriately named suburb of Grand Rapids, and it is home to all kinds of folks, not just knights and kings and queens. While it doesn't have a moat, it is partially surrounded by water, and it is made of stone, or at the very least, cement. And like most castles, it does strike an imposing figure on the landscape. There are some key differences, though, between the Grand Castle and the castles we normally think of. The Grand Castle is a 500-plus unit apartment community, and it was built between 2016 and 2018. The inspiration for the design of the Grand Castle was the Neuenstein Castle, which is a 19th century historic palace that sits in the foothills of the Alps in Bavaria, Germany. And the person who conceived and built this project was named Roger Lucas. Lucas was a longtime builder in the Grand Rapids area, and he worked mainly, although not entirely, for a local company called Land & Co. And he specialized in his career mostly in multifamily structures like this one. So I took a brief run through the property this winter driving, because as I did not want to be intrusive, as this is the home of over 500 families. Now, driving through the parking structure, which surrounds the lower portion of the structure, it was a maze, but it gave you a really, really good sense of what a massively built, impressively built structure this really is. It is totally on par with other castle-like structures like the Excalibur in Vegas, which I have been to, and many of the hotels that you might see in cities like Las Vegas or Orlando or New York, or any major city you can think of. It is incredibly huge. Now, thankfully, I did not need to try and sneak in to see the inside, as there is a unit in the building posted on, we'll just say, a popular short-term accommodations website. And it kind of gives us a feel for living inside this great fortification. As you can see, it definitely has all the fixtures and features you'd expect for a mid-2010s building. It also has a pool, a gym, a pet wash, a game room, and a huge library. I'd imagine there'd be great opportunity to meet the locals as well as any lords and ladies if you're living inside these walls. Of course, if you'd like to learn more about the castle, you can always check out their website at grandcastle.com. Now, most castles, as we think of them, were built before the advent of electric lights. I mean, we all imagine torches and oil lamps lighting the chambers of most castles. And while the Grand Castle definitely came along well after the era of torches and oil lamps, it does sit only 6 miles from the location of the first commercial use of hydroelectric power in the United States. That's right, Grand Rapids, Michigan was the first city in the U.S. to have commercial hydroelectric power. Now, it didn't power the whole city, but it was an impressive feat nonetheless. On July 24th, 1880, the first electric light bulb came to life in Grand Rapids, powered by a 16-bulb generator that had been installed by Mr. William Powers, another appropriate name, on the west side of the river at the Wolverine Chair and Furniture Factory that sat on the West Side Power Canal. The first businesses to get light that day were located along Pearl Street near Canal Street, now known as Monroe. They were Sweets Hotel, Powers Opera House, Pierce's Clothing Store, the Spring and Company's Dry Goods Store, Mill and Lacey's Drug Store, Prusser's Jewelry Store, and the Star Clothing House. And if you look at the image on the screen, the square on the left is the location of where the powerhouse used to be, along with the canal, and it is now the site of the Grand Rapids Public Museum. On the right-hand side is circled the area where most of those businesses were located. Specifically, that one is centered on the location of Mr. Powers' Opera House. Things evolved very quickly from that point. There was demand for more lighting, and the generator was quickly moved further down the canal to Mr. Powers' sawmill, and a 40-bulb generator was installed. And then by March of the next year, there came a contract from the city for public street lighting. And after a few more moves to increase the capacity, a full permanent powerhouse was opened on that site in November of 1881. Power generation along the West Side Canal continued until 1956, when the operation was finally decommissioned by Consumers Power, or as we know it nowadays, Consumer Energy. And if you look at the image on the screen, I've circled it with blue, is the location of the final powerhouse. I believe this image is from the 1940s or 50s. And you can see along the side of the river closest to us the canal, which powered not just electrically the city, but other businesses back in time. Today, now, however, the canal is gone. No longer useful for power generation after 1956, it's rumored that the canal was filled in during the 1960s, when the U.S. interstate system was built through Grand Rapids, and there was plenty of fill dirt left from the excavation of Interstate 196 through the Belknap Lookout area, and that's on screen here. The top of the screen is facing east, and you can see the cut through the city for Interstate 196 and some of the bridges and overpasses that are being already built in preparation for the roadway coming through, and that left a lot of fill dirt. And that was used, or so it's rumored, to fill in the canal. Now, the land today along the river that has been filled in is home to the Grand Rapids Public Museum, as I mentioned, and do highly recommend to visit if you're in town, the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum, and the Ah-Naba-Wen Park. But to prove that history is not always lost, recent work at the Grand Rapids Public Museum dug up an early 1900s power generator from the original facility that had been buried in the 1960s when the canal was filled in. And I actually got to see this in person just this week when I went to the museum, and it was sitting right out there by the fence where I could get some close-up shots. The museum is planning on cleaning up this piece and putting it on display inside the museum. Now, in this episode, we've touched on not-so-ancient castles, video game-themed rentals, lost canals, and the dawning of electric light in western Michigan. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey, and hope you offer your suggestions for more topics in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back with another episode real soon.